All right, hey everybody, Ben Myers here. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to make a backyard rink. I'm going to show you how to do this extremely cheaply. So this is going to be cost effective, and I'm going to show you what kind of tarp to buy, how to fill it with water, all kinds of little tips and tricks. So I'm going to film this. I'm going to do a lot of voiceovers and speed up some of the photography so that this video doesn't take forever, but follow along. Now the rink I'm going to build is going to span from this deck to the shed. It's going to be roughly 30 foot long, come up 16 foot. So one of the first things you need to do is determine how much slope you have on your yard. So I'm going to be building my rink 16 feet wide. I've got a 16-foot board here and a level. The easiest way to find how much slope you have, you stick your level on top of your board and you hold it where you want your rink until it's level. As you can see, it's level, and over here, that's how much slope we have. So you can grab your tape measure and measure this. From the ground to the bottom is approximately 8 inches. So I know that I have minimum 8 inches of slope. We're always going to want to account for more slope because going different lengths, there could be more slope in the one corner than there is in the other. So I'm going to account for approximately 12 inches of slope from the high side to the low side. And for the material, I have a contracting business, so I always have a bunch of leftover deck boards. I'm going to use deck boards to do this. This is a little bit more time consuming, but all this material is free. Now, if you don't want to use deck boards, the cheapest alternative would be OSB or plywood. These come in 4x8 sheets, and then you can rip them down to whatever length you want. If you have no slope in your yard, you could cut them to 12-inch lengths. If you have more slope, 18 or 24-inch lengths. To start, I'm going to bring over all of my lumber to where I want to build my first wall. If you're using plywood or OSB, the process is going to be the same. Unload the lumber where you want to work with it. So I've got my deck boards laid out. This is the low side of my yard. So my rink is going to go here, and it's hard to tell with the snow, but I know I have approximately an 18-inch drop. So the wall over here I'm going to make 12 inches high. This wall is going to be approximately 24 inches high. So I've got 5 of these deck boards that I'm going to join them all together. To do that, I cut some of these deck boards into small pieces, and I'm going to screw them all together at the joint. And then to keep them all in line going up, I've got some longer boards that I'm going to screw on just like that to hold it all together. Okay, so I've got some 1.5-inch deck screws. These boards are 1 inch thick, so this way the screws won't poke through. We really want to make sure that we have nothing sticking up and through, as we do not want to have anything sharp that could damage our tarp. I'm screwing one piece of blocking onto each board to join them together. If you're using plywood or OSB, all you have to do is screw a board together to join each joint in the plywood. So make sure you use the right screws that they don't poke through, and then screw them together to whatever length you want. Okay, here's what it looks like. I've got my first wall, all the boards joined together. So these are now 30 foot long. If you're making it out of plywood, you're going to have to put a board to support each joint for the length of your wall. Next, I want to screw these all together. So I've got a scrap 2x6 that I cut slightly longer than my wall. I'm going to screw it on to hold all my boards together. If you're using plywood, you don't need to do this. Now in my case, this board is going to sandwich all my deck boards together so that the wall is nice and tight. I also want to mention that it's ideal to build your rink before it actually snows. So as you can see, the weather here is terrible. I got caught doing this later in the year than I'd like to. But next we're going to pick up our wall. Depending how big it is, you may need help, and we're going to put it in place. Next, as you can see, I've just got a scrap 2x4 here, and I'm using my circular saw to cut a wedge, and then I'm going to cut this to length so that it's slightly higher than my wall.
and I'll cut a wedge on the other end. We're going to then grab a sledgehammer. If all you have is an axe, you could also use that, and we're going to pound this in behind the wall where we want it. Next up, we're going to put our sidewalls into place. This is a lot easier if you have somebody helping you hold the wall while you put it up in place. But the way I like to do this is to just temporarily rest it and then grab a couple screws and screw it into the end board on the corner. This is going to hold it there until you can get your wedges and anchor it into the ground. For this front wall, lift it up into place, and then the same thing we did on the back corners, we're going to temporarily screw these together. Just make sure that your screws do not poke through the wood. We don't want anything sharp sticking through that could damage our tarp.
Okay guys, I started building this rink yesterday and it was an absolute snowstorm. So it was hard for me to film a lot of it, but I'll catch you guys up on what I did. So I used deck boards to make all the framing for this. I did that because I had them on hand. If I were to buy new material, I would buy 1/2-inch plywood. And then depending on the length, your plywood sheets come in 8 foot wide by 4 foot. So you could cut them into 12-inch strips. So you'd have 8 foot long by 12-inch tall. If you need more, you could go 18, 24-inch, and you can get multiple strips out of a single piece of plywood. And then the process would be the exact same. You are going to join them together just by screwing into some more scrap material. I used 2x6. I screwed from the rink going out. That way there's no chance of me having any sharp objects. And then the way that I secure these boards into the ground is I grab an axe and I've got just some 2x2s that I cut a point on. I simply cut the point using my skill saw, and then I just pound these in against the fence, and I pound them in approximately every 5 or so feet. What this does, when we fill this rink with water, it keeps the boards from bowing out because there's going to be pressure going out. So this is just going to keep the walls from collapsing. The low side, which is here, that's going to be where the majority of the weight is. So I put my stakes approximately every 3 feet there. If you don't have wood, you could use rebar or pipe.
I'm going to go around and finish pounding in the rest of these stakes. I use 2x2s because they're the cheapest. If you want something a little bit more sturdy, you could use 2x4s and cut wedges on them. They will be harder to pound into the ground though. And then you want to pound these in so that they are below your boards.
Here's a look at the tarp I'm going to be using. I'll link this in the video bio. I got it off Amazon. It's 12mm thick. So this is a nice thick tarp. You don't want to cheap out on your tarp as it can cause leaks. So the other thing is this tarp is 20 foot by 40 foot. So it's a lot wider than the actual rink. That's important. You need enough tarp that you can fold it up and over the sides. You never want to go too small because the weight of the water can pull the tarp down and you can end up with leaks. So get a bigger tarp. My walls are 2 foot high, so I'm accounting for 3 foot of tarp going over that wall. This wall's 1.5 foot high, so I've accounted for an extra foot at least on all the sides. The next thing we're going to do is unpackage this and put it all over this rink.
Here's a closer look at this tarp. Again, the link for it is in the video description. I purchased it from Amazon.
Okay guys, I've got some scrap wood clamps here. You may not need these, but these are great if you're working by yourself. You can clamp the tarp to the boards so that it doesn't blow away. So let's open this up.
Something I forgot to mention is before we put our tarp down, we need to walk around and make sure that there's nothing sharp on the ground, or there's nothing sharp like a screw, nail, or wood chip sticking through our boards. Something as little as a little chip of wood or a branch on the ground with all the weight of the water could cause damage to the tarp, creating a hole which then would leak. It's nice to have a helper if you've got a big tarp like this and clamp it in place.
When we're putting our tarp in, you need to have slack in the corners. If you have your corners without any slack, it can tear the tarp. So I like to go in and make sure that I have enough tarp coming down that my corners here are no longer tight. So give it a little bit more slack, and then I'll place my clamp on here and hold it down. Once we get the weight of the water in, it's going to hold the tarp down. We just want to make sure that we have slack. I also want to mention, the darker the color of the tarp, the more it warms up. So if you have a dark tarp and you have a sunny day, it can melt your ice quicker. It would have been nice to have a white tarp, but unfortunately the supplier, all they make is this gray, which is better than nothing. But that's our tarp. The next thing to do is fill it. When it comes to rinks, you need a minimum of 3 inches of ice. So I'm gonna fill this. This bottom side is my low side. That's probably gonna have over a foot of water. We're just gonna keep filling it till the high side ends up with about 4 inches of water, and then we're gonna let it freeze. All right, I got the water flowing. So next we just have to fill this thing up. And then once it's full, we just let it freeze. So if it's, depending where you live, it's going to take longer to freeze. Here where I am in Canada, most nights are around -15 Celsius, and we can generally get about ½ inch of ice per 24 hours at that temperature. So I'm just going to let this fill. We want to keep an eye on it, make sure that none of our corners are getting pulled down too tight. As the water starts filling, it's going to go to the low side, so we'll just keep an eye on our tarp. And this is going to take a few hours of filling. If you go online, there's different formulas you can use to figure out how much water your rink is going to need, but you can fill it straight from your house or you can get water delivered. Okay guys, it's hard to see, but this is filling up. So the low side has water. We have water to about half of this rink. So this other side is quite a bit higher. I'm just going to keep filling this up. And then once I have about 3 inches of water on the entire thing, I'll shut it off. And then it's just a waiting game to let it freeze. It's been 5 days since I flooded the rink. Something important I want to share is anytime it snows, you need to remove the snow as quickly as you can. The snow causes the ice to really get soft and you get a bad freeze. So grab a shovel, shovel it clear whenever it snows. If it's a light snow, a trick you can do is to use a leaf blower.
To clarify, this rink is not frozen enough for me to walk on yet, so this is a great trick to remove some of the snow while it's still freezing.
If your rink is too wide and you can't reach the whole rink from the outside, just grab a scrap piece of wood and screw it onto a shovel. This allows you to extend the shovel to whatever length that you need so that you can reach the entire rink. All right guys, I'm gonna check how thick this ice is. So as you can see, I've got a drill with a drill bit. I wanna make sure that I'm not gonna poke through my tarp. So I know I have about 5.5 inches of water here. So I'm gonna set my drill bit to the depth of 4 inches. That means I can't drill past 4 inches. For an outdoor rink, you need 2 to 4 inches to skate on. 3 inches is kind of the sweet spot. So I'm simply just gonna drill here and see when I hit water. Okay, I hit water right around there. So that means I have about 3.5 inches of ice.
It's always a good idea to check the thickness of the ice in 2 different spots. This guarantees that the ice is frozen to that thickness.
I can walk on here no problem. It's been 5 days. Here in Ontario where I live, it's been around -10 Celsius overnight. So we've been getting approximately ½ inch to 1 inch of freezing per day. I'm gonna give this a really good shovel and then let it freeze for 1 more day, and then we should be able to skate on it.
Thank you all for watching. The next day I took my daughter out to skate on the rink, so we'll be able to have a lot of fun with this all season. It would mean a lot if you could leave a comment, like the video, or subscribe to my channel. Thanks a lot.